Okay. Hello, everybody who is watching us today or later. I'm with Gregangelo Herrera from San Francisco. And how I met him, I was in San Francisco and I was kind of couch surfing at his place. And yeah, Greg is an amazing human being, and that's why I wanted to have him in front of the camera and talk to him. Yeah, you want to say something before I continue?
Do I want? No, I want to say what a joy it was to meet you. And I always think, right now I'm thinking what a miracle this technology is, because for all the complaints people have for technology, isn't it amazing that we can actually communicate? I think it's awesome.
That's true. Yeah.
This was, when I was growing up, this was just a dream to be able to look at each other. You know, this is cool, and I'm grateful to know you.
Okay, thank you. So let's go when you were growing up. Like, how was it?
When I was growing up, that's a big question. Right, just brainstorm. I grew up in San Francisco, 1960s, 1970s, coming of age really in the 80s as a young man, independent. So it was pretty it was awesome. It was intense. It was dangerous. It was sexy. It was frightening, because I grew up in the arc of, right in the beginning, everything was converging in San Francisco at that time, from the sort of the end of the civil rights movement. And San Francisco had already been a very liberated place. Now we call it a sanctuary city, but it already had that feeling of inclusion and acceptance all the time. But then there was a sexual revolution and a feminist revolution and the queer revolution were all happening and converging in San Francisco all at once. And you can't imagine all the things that happened at that time. The Summer of Love, which became legendary. That was sort of they planted the seeds of what we now call the shared economy, which so many people are capitalizing on in a monetary way. But in San Francisco, they're capitalizing it on in a social way, which is still, it's sort of it's an endangered species now in the city, because the more people make money on things here, we see a culture clash. But going back to the 70s and 80s, at the 80s, the culmination of it was the city was devastated by the AIDS epidemic. So it was incredible to see at that time how people really rose and helped one another without knowing how to help each other, just with whatever in their own means and their own power. And I keep telling people now we're in a time of another culture clash in San Francisco. And I want to speak very San Francisco centric, because it is a very international city. It's why I met you. It's why I opened my home to everybody. But right now, there's a new sort of economic class of, millionaires, billionaires, whatever. I don't judge anybody on their money. I think it's great that people can earn, but we're seeing epidemics of homelessness, mental illness, people on the streets, people in the workforce living in their cars. It's terrible, right? It's happening right now here. And no one knows how to help at this time. I think we're going to start seeing a rise again. So there you go.
And it's kind of like the center of the world, not Californication, if you think about it, that it's like foreshadowing many.
I'm not sure. You tell me. Tell me your view from where you are.
From where I am?
Yeah,
no, I think definitely like what you mentioned, like the homelessness was insane in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It was very, very bad. And also it feels like when you look at what you're also talking about, the other culture clash, like with the tech companies, it seems like it's all like the Silicon Valley is close to San Francisco, right?
Yeah, they're in San Francisco now. They've basically sort of I'm very pro-business, and I love that. I don't want to ever sound negative about people being creative and newness, and I love adapting to newness. I open the conversation by saying, isn't this technology incredible, which is happening in Silicon Valley? But I think what's right now, they've sort of infected San Francisco in a way. They're not seeing the beauty of the culture. They're not seeing the inclusivity. They're not seeing the acceptance. And I would see it's many of their own workers or who we're seeing not so much on the streets that are living in their cars, though. We see thousands of people living in their cars in the Bay Area now that are working. They're going to work. They're working for startups. They're working for tech companies. But because the people of more monetary affluence, I'm always going to say monetary because I don't consider wealth or affluence to be related to money at all. I think of that more of an innate thing. But the monetary affluence we're seeing is so grotesque that it's literally, it's like a virus forcing people, it's killing the healthy cells. It literally is, which is why we're seeing this kind of disease on the streets, this kind of homelessness, this kind of drugs. And it goes from everywhere from babies to elderly and everything in between that we're seeing. And it's a disgrace to see that, you know, people of means and of power and of...
Are you gone?
No, there's just a phone call coming in. I'm very popular over here. Oh, am I back? Am I here? There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to keep getting interrupted. I talk all day long to people. It's just kind of, I'm going to read you a quote in a minute that kind of, should I do it right now? Or here, I'm going to run. I'm going to grab, somebody sent me some words that says exactly what's happening right now. And it's also a global epidemic, I think. Can you give me 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read a sentence to you because you're a great wordsmith. And this is a difficult sentence. I'll be right back. Okay, this is something I put it up. I wrote this and I left it on there. There's a I don't know if you remember, in the house there's this sort of candy altar that's sort of talking about civilization and transformation. So this is sort of at the top of that now, the words. This came from our Hiromi, is a girl from Japan who works here. She wrote the title. This is somebody's famous words. I should be quoting people, but what I've learned is I don't quote the person who writes it because people are very judgmental on people. So it's, for me, you know what I mean? They'll judge the person rather than the intelligence of the words. So the title is Art Should Comfort the Disturbed and Disturb the Comfortable. I think a lot of people might have heard this. Now here's the sentence, which I'm going to do my best. There's a lot going on in this sentence, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is happening in San Francisco and around the world. There is a significant population of spectator activists who rail on our collective inability to confront needed change with the sense of urgency it deserves, while using precisely 0% of their influence and agency to change the status quo. That's a big sentence.
Can you read it again?
Yes, and it's hard to digest, but it's so brilliant. It's showing what's happening. Okay, I'll try to read it in a different way. There is a significant population of spectator activists, people who are just watching what's happening without doing anything, who rail on our collective inability to confront needed change with the sense of urgency that it deserves, while using precisely 0% of their influence and agency to change the status quo. So it's a big sense. Really, if I just said it quickly, we can say we're seeing a lot of world leaders right now that don't give a shit about people, that are really dividing people, that are hurting people, that are alienating people. But this sentence is saying, should these leaders who have such influence over the population all of a sudden say, here's solutions to how we can help each other, here's how we can come together, it would change the world in a minute. Yet we're not seeing this happen. We're seeing the divide and getting further and further and further, which is what we're seeing in San Francisco right now. People are converging here because it is a sanctuary city. We do try to take care of each other. It's out of control right now, though. There's not enough services to handle everything right now. There's not enough housing. There's not enough anything. So I'm going to hold this up so you can maybe, I don't know if you can read it.
Just hold it like 10 seconds. Yeah, but I think, you know, like, of course, always like the rich could change everything in a second, but it's just not what's going to happen. It's just not the game.
I know that.
Our planet.
Yeah.
So.
But for me, that's called being poor. Because for those of us who, and again, I'm not railing against people of affluence and money. That's not a fight that I want to fight. It's just saying, even people who have you don't have to have any money at all to be able to influence others. I know in my own company, I don't have money, but I know that I've built trust with people. I know the reason that we're talking right now is because we built trust with one another. To me, that's rich. And to me, in our own community of friends and in their community of friends, it's exponential. that if we can show each other our abilities on how we can raise, how we can help one another, how we can do things that actually matter, that make us as individuals feel good, then collectively we raise, you know what I mean? And it's just not what it's hard right now. I don't know I don't know anything about politics and all that, but I do know immediately in our communities that we can do things, you know, for sure. I've seen it happen every day. I see it happen consistently, you know?
Yeah, let's go there, because I think also, as I see it, like if we raise like consciousness, whatever, it has like a rippling out effect.
It does, just with your friends, with one another, and it ripples out for sure.
Yeah.
But it's got to be genuine. It has to be genuine. It can't be learned or forced, or and it's different in everybody. Everybody has a different strength. I call it a power. Everybody has a different power in themselves, very different. And I'm tired of, even on social media, I'm a big communicator. As you know, you see me every time. I'm surrounded by people all the time, and I love it. But what I've noticed, even on social media, I see consistently people saying, I don't know what this means. They always say I'm easygoing and open-minded. I don't really know what that means. I think it's just a thing that people just say. It's like a cliche. Right. I don't know what that means. But I always ask, I don't know what that means. That doesn't tell me anything about you. I think it's a positive thing, whatever that means. But the part that always sort of jabs me is they all say, I'm looking for like-minded people. And to me, that's dangerous. I find that to be incredibly dangerous, to only surround yourself with like-minded or people who think the same thoughts, because then we can never learn or share or send out those waves of raising consciousness to anybody, because if we're like-minded, well, there's no use, you know. I mean, I think it's important to always diversify, to always try to understand opinions and lifestyles that might be completely opposite of you, to accept them. You don't have to love them, but I think the only way to communicate is to really understand each other first. Where are these, you know, there's so many differences right now that seem to be getting worse and worse. You know, I'm talking from San Francisco even, which is probably one of the most liberated cities, you know.
Yeah, let's go to, so you told me the story, you brought like different people together in your house, and you told me like you had all the ingredients to start a war. Like,
you remember that, huh?
So let's go to the story.
Okay. Well,
and maybe something about the house then. I don't know.
Okay. So I live in an art house. Maybe in a few minutes I'll move the camera and you can see things. I live in a house that over 40 years has developed into an international arts attraction, quite organically, quite accidentally. I'm an entertainer. I have an arts and entertainment company, which started as a circus company. And my job has always been to go out to the public and entertain them, doing shows or immersive experiences or interactive or installations, whatever it is. And the house was a lab that I used to create the art that I would bring to the public. Though the house is very different than what I bring to the public. So over the years, it started attracting a lot of people. Paying customers, actually. So I get a lot of paying customers, which I love. I enjoy. We do immersive tours of the house that are very much about the path of life, and they're very profound. They're conversational. They're not even really about the art.
What's the path of life?
They're kind of the path of life, the arc of life, the cosmos, Mother Nature, things that matter. It's everything it's things that I always say you can't really quantify, and that most people don't have the time to think about. What I love about the tours now in the digital age is that we don't, for the first, we don't allow any digital devices in the house until the end. So we really have a conversation for 3, 4, sometimes people, there was a guest who yesterday said when he did the tour, I wasn't the guy, that he stayed here for 7 hours. That's insane, that he stayed in this place for 7 hours, having conversations, no Google, no nothing, no, just thinking and wondering and not, you know, and so it's been a wonderful place, but it's expensive. So what I realized is that I want to keep my home open to everybody. So I started hosting travelers like yourself who didn't have money, who I didn't want to sell a ticket to. I just wanted to meet as people. So I open my house once or twice a week now, as I'm available, to people who somehow find me that aren't of means. They're young travelers who really don't have the money, but they have the curiosity. And I call them, what I call them now, it's a little bit of a joke, I call them cultural encounters of the third kind. So it's sort of, we're having a cultural encounter where we're right there with each other. we're not, some people say the house is a museum, but it's not. It's like, we're really going to exchange cultures. So one day, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I opened the door to several, I think I had about 10 guests that day. I was telling you, and I'll never forget, I had a sort of a millionaire guy from Los Angeles who's in the fashion industry. I had a young guy who was traveling across the country at music festivals, kind of a gypsy, almost a homeless kid, but very intelligent, kind of this raggedy, grungy guy that had a violin. And I had a girl who was a Catholic missionary, somehow found me online and was fascinated more by the artistry of it. I had 2 brothers from a Muslim country. I had 2 Mormon boys here, and I had a girl from communist China, all on the same day. And they're actually, it sounds like a joke. You know what I mean? I think there might have been a couple other people, but that's the diversity I happen to remember, because I don't know that much about them when they come. And even some of them, because my lifestyle is very, very liberated here, even some of them,
What does that mean? What?
What do you want to know? So I just thought I live a very San Francisco lifestyle. I encourage nudism, naturism, just being yourself. I always say the house is sort of a truth serum, and I'm not going to have it any other way. There's going to be respect without formality. There's going to be acceptance. There's going to be inclusivity. I don't care who you are. And I'm going to welcome everybody. And it's not just the reason my job is to go out in the world and interactively entertain people is because that's genuinely who I am. It's what I love to do. I love to connect people and to learn about people and to help others learn about each other. So anyway, that day, or that night, I think we were together for 2 nights in the house. Somewhere into it, people are nude and playing, the Catholic missionaries playing music, and the Mormon boys were not trying to convert us in any way. Everyone's just being themselves. I kind of looked at everybody a few hours into it and said, you realize we have all the ingredients to start a war right here, from all the different backgrounds you're from. And here we are all together laughing and dancing naked and playing and singing music and exploring and really caring about each other in the most genuine way. And I really realized, so in the house, there's no politics, there's no government, there's not all that crap that the status quo shoves down our throat here. There really isn't. It's like a magical realm.
Like freedom?
A freedom. But it's not freedom to abuse yourself. It's not freedom to, do excessive drugs. It's not freedom to be abusive. It's freedom to just simply to be you. And I know to me, that is my drug. And you've met me, and I think you realize it's my creativity, my ability to do my energy, kind of a hyperfuck, that's my ability to share. And I choose to share it by, with others, hoping that they can share it with others as well. So, and there's thousands of stories. At the end of that outing, and a few of them I've stayed in touch with, some of them I probably will never see again. I remember specifically, I outed the Mormon boys. They're obviously a queer couple to me. I'm from San Francisco, and they kept denying it. And I was like, I kind of told them that's not a question. I understand who you guys are. You're fine here. And then they calmed down and were relieved. I'm not a religious person, really. I enjoy all the stories from religion.
So you outed them. So
I outed the 2 boys because when it came to sleeping situations, I knew they were queer. I didn't ask them. I just knew they were. But when I said, you guys can sleep together because I know you're a couple, they were terrified. And I was like, no, I'm not questioning that. I'm telling you, I understand who you are. And they immediately calmed down, and they're able to be together and sleep together and be themselves as a lovely couple. But within their religion, they can't do that. They would be ousted, they'd be ostracized, and it brings them fear in their hearts, which is unnecessary. It's just natural. The Catholic girl actually the next day brought me to a church, and I was like, I don't really go to church. I don't really enjoy masses and stuff. And she actually, I'll never forget. She's like, it's not about the mass. She goes, today the Pope, I guess the Catholic Pope, I can't remember his name right now. Apparently he's a very cool guy. People like the guy, and I've never met him, so I don't know if I like him or not. But apparently there is a day of what they called open doors at all the Catholic churches in the city, which meant that everybody was welcome to come in from any faith, from the street, from anywhere. and there wasn't any kind of service. It was completely secular. And I thought that was really beautiful. And at the end of the experience, the millionaire guy in the fashion industry, who's, you know, I was like, well, you're gonna have to lose your clothes. We're not gonna talk about fashion at all. Take off your fancy shoes. We're not gonna do any of that stuff here. Befriended the young gypsy boy in a very realistic way. And I remember him coming up to me later and saying, and it was a difficult thing for him to say, he said, in my life, I would completely ignore and even be rude to somebody like that in my life. And this is the first time I've experienced actually really spending time with somebody, and this boy is so smart, and we've become good friends, and I think they've stayed in touch with each other. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening in the house. You're getting these disparate entities together. People take a risk to even come here, because oftentimes I tell them, you know, I probably told the Muslim guys, you know, you might not want to be in a household where there's naked people dancing around. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. It's not that I don't want you here. And they insisted on it. And actually, this was funny too. When they got into that lifestyle, he was so liberated and so free. He kept telling me, this is not even a possibility in my culture, in my country, in our own home. And the next day he wanted to go to the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, sure, let's go to the bridge. And he refused to put his clothes on. I was like, well, the rules don't apply everywhere. You know? It's like, and he's like, finally I got him to put on his pants with no shirt. And we go to the Golden Gate Bridge, and he runs out to it. He's like, you know, chest to the wind. And he's like, this is incredible. He goes, no one's noticing. He goes, I would be arrested in my country for doing this. And so it's just been amazing to see. See, when you bring people together in a safe place that's genuine, no dogmas, no agendas, that you realize the goodness that everybody has within them, and how people can really interact with people who they really think they couldn't interact with. Truly, you know what I mean? I mean, we got people in here who are of extreme. I mean, my house is open to everybody, so I don't know who they are, and I'm not going to unwelcome anybody. I know we have people that are extreme, you know, on the political, you know, spectrum, or, you know, will have extreme differences of values and lifestyles, yet they show up, and we respect each other. And we don't even need to discuss those things, really. If somebody here ever wants to discuss politics or religion, I don't refuse it, but what I try to do is steer it into more of a, well, what's the psychological reason for these decisions? Forget about what somebody told you. Why do you really believe that? And I think it's important to know. And I'm not always overjoyed with the answers, but whatever. It's not, we all come from different cultures, you know?
But that's also, I think, what I realize now is one of your superpowers, like going straight to the point, no? Like, don't accepting the bullshit.
Well, yeah, I don't know. You know, honestly, I think I was born without filters. And I think that's also, going back to San Francisco, very much a part of the culture here. It's a real, you know, everyone always thinks I'm from New York or this and that, because they think New York's rough and tough. But and everybody I know in San Francisco who grew up here, who's native here, several generations, very direct, very to the point, very loving and kind, but can be misinterpreted as being rude or rough and tough. But it's actually quite the opposite. But so I would say, you know, it's a family value. It's also maybe a part of the culture that I grew up in. It's a rough city here. You know, it really is a rough city. It's a beautiful city. We go through a lot of changes here. The city changes rapidly all the time. It's changed many times since I've been growing up here, and I embrace change and I love it. I don't love it when people don't help each other, though. And again, I'm going to keep repeating that. That's what we're seeing now. And I'm taking it as the function of our company and all the artists who I work with and everybody who walks in the house to help empower people to help others, not by sending money, not by doing some good deed, but just doing what they can. That's innate. You know what I mean? We've all got a little something. We had a Mother's Day was yesterday in the house, and there was a sort of we call Tea in Wonderland. I partner with a Malaysian tea company. And we do this immersive theatrical thing, and it's usually quite, it's not like a fancy British tea party. We're actually asking questions. It's a little bit gritty, but very kind. And we ask questions of each other. And somebody asked one of the mothers, what's the worst poverty you've ever seen? And she kind of, I can tell this is a woman who probably has never actually seen or experienced poverty. She was a beautiful, lovely woman and probably very lucky in her life. And she goes, well, probably, in Africa somewhere. And I kind of said, well, maybe you might want to take a walk down one of the streets 8 blocks from here and see real poverty. It's like, have you been to Africa? She's like, well, no, I haven't. I'm like, well, why are you assuming that people in Africa are impoverished when you're living in a culture that is horribly impoverished right now, and you have the power to maybe help a little bit, you know what I mean? And the conversation went off and on through the 3 hours she was here. And at the end, she thanked me for kind of ruffling her feathers a little bit. I didn't mean to. It was just that directness of saying, stop thinking about some distant place and do what you can right in front of you. You know what I mean? And that's, we all have the power to do that. Everybody does. We just have to, you know?
Mm. What else does your company do?
My company. So my company.
Tell us the name.
So the name of my company, it's a long title, Gregangelo's Velocity Arts and Entertainment. I call it Velocity Circus. That's my short name for it. And I use the word circus. Originally, I used the word circus as the Latin word for meaning, circle. So I was thinking circle of arts. But very soon after I kind of announced our little company, this was 30 years ago, I started getting calls for circus acts because it was very popular at the time. Cirque du Soleil was coming. People started sort of respecting circus acts. So I quickly partnered with a local circus school, started training there, ended up teaching there, and actually formed a circus company quite accidentally. But I continue to do things in a circle of arts. Right now we have about 10 artists in residence who work in the house, about 5 or 6 interns. So right now we're working on installations. We're writing a book that's sort of a journey using the house as a bit of an Alice in Wonderland thing, but it basically goes to the arc of depression, it goes to the arc of grief, basically, the story. And at the end, I guess it comes out acceptance, but you don't know that that's actually happening in the story. It's very fantastical. We're working on several shows right now for the public. It's prom season right now in San Francisco, so we're entertaining a lot of youth at their high school proms, which is their formal when the year ends. We're doing some corporate events for the large corporations that are here. They're a bit afraid of art right now, but that'll pass.
What was it like? What was it in the quote? Like, disturb the convenient?
Oh yeah, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Yeah.
That's not my quote, but I think it's interesting. My intent is never to disturb the comfortable, but I realize that it in fact does. So that you're right. That was a perfect tie-in there. You're such a smart guy. So it does disturb the comfortable. So though I'd have to say, most of our corporate workforce here, I invite a lot of them into the house. In fact, I'm hosting next Thursday, and I'm getting a lot of these young people coming from the corporate workforce because they're not allowed to be themselves anymore. They're so governed. Their human resource departments, they're so constricted that they've become very afraid to speak their own truth for fear of just losing their job, being cut off. And they do lose their job. I've heard many stories of people lose their job. They're having a conversation in a bar somewhere, whatever, on their free time, and somebody tells on them like a little child, and they get fired for because everybody, we're in this era of such constriction where everybody is what do they call it, politically correct, or all these things. I don't even know what they mean. To me, it means they're all lying. To me, it means they're all lying to themselves. To me, that all means self-deceit. I very much believe in respecting each other, but you can't you can't enforce rules on that. It has to come naturally. It has to come through influence. It has to, you can't just place rules on that. So we're seeing these young people really suffering terrible right now. Very unhappy. So I judge, for an artist who never has a lot of money, enough to get by, I'm very proud of what I do with my money. I support other people. That's what I do. I support other artists who are kind of misfits, who are a little bit ousted by society, but contribute to the world in leaps and bounds. And people don't realize, I always joke about that when people say, oh, we don't need arts in schools, all this music, all this stuff, what a waste of money. Usually their next sentences. Oh my God, I saw the best movie last night, or I went to this concert. And I always say, well, that movie took, maybe 1,000 artists to make, or that concert those are artists. Those are everything people are doing, from their video games to everyone's in earphones these days, listening to music and playing video games. And like, those are all artists that are creating that. I think people forget that, their connection to the world through their, not just artist creativity, but through their own creativity. I'm not so crazy about digital art right now. I think I think it has incredible potential to be greater. I think right now we're kind of in the middle. I've been trying to really collaborate more with digital artists to figure out how do we bring it a little closer to the human heart. And people are trying, and it's been nice.
Something happened? Something.
What's that?
You already got some results?
Well, I'm working on some collaborate. Yeah, I've done a couple of the local tech companies that are doing virtual reality. I had a fun gig. It was last year where it's a company that's sort of leaders in virtual reality. Have you been in a virtual reality headset yet?
One time.
It's pretty cool.
It's
pretty
fun.
cool. I mean, it's neat. It's an amazing artistic platform. I think it could be catastrophic or it can be miraculous. So I'm not sure where we're going, but we got hired by a company during it was a very large gaming convention in San Francisco, and these guys happen to be based in San Francisco. The leaders, they gave us a little room in their basement and asked me to create an immersive experience that looked like VR, but that wasn't VR. And we put the goggles on people, but everything was real. We had live actors, and they're all characters. It was this fantastical world that you couldn't tell it was a little bit psychedelic. But the characters would engage back with them and talk to them and answer their questions and even touch them. And people were like, oh my God, this technology is incredible. But the gag was, it wasn't technology at all. It was just us and a few light bulbs and smoke and mirrors and projectors just doing our thing. And people were lining up to go to this thing. And it was fun. We just started, there is a thing called AR, augmented reality, or actual reality. We just kept calling it RR. It's like, this is just real reality. And it was nice to see people were lining up literally to be touched, to be engaged with, to interact. And, and VR is a bit of a lonely space right now. I know people are working on integrating it so multiple people can be in I call it the dome at one time. But currently it's a bit lonely. And I know people are I know for a fact, by what I do with my life every day, is that people are longing for connection, and that's not quite giving it to them yet, but it has the potential to.
Brings me to the other story you told me with the superhero.
Yes. What was it? What was that story? Refresh my memory.
where you created this one superhero that was not.
Yes. Wow, we talked a lot. That story stuck with me a lot. That's okay. So I have I'll preface this by saying I have one of our artists in residence is a young man, a black guy from Chicago, very smart. I think you met him, Kyle. You might have met Kyle. And sometimes I wonder about the world and how people aren't exercising their incredible abilities, because I see the potential in people, and I really try to push it and to raise potential. And I think really highly.
How?
What's that? So I think highly of people. Go ahead.
No, how do you push potential?
Well, by asking people to do things that they might not have done before, and then when they realize they can, I think all of us have to push ourselves through life, or you're just going to kind of flatline. I teach them not to be in balance. People are always trying to be in balance. I'm like, you can't be in balance. That's just like not living. You know what I mean? It's like, I teach everyone to do things all the time. And it's different in every person, but I really do genuinely get excited for each individual and to see, it's not even me being a provocateur. It's me like actually being excited to see what people are capable of. I love seeing people be successful. That's really my game. I love it. I love to see people being successful, and that's different in everybody. But when people refuse to be successful, they refuse to push their potential, they just, what we call, it's a San Francisco term called drinking the Kool-Aid. Have you heard of that? It's a tragic thing that happened in the city. It was a mass suicide. And that's a term from San Francisco. So drinking the Kool-Aid means you're just accepting the status quo, drinking the Kool-Aid, and letting everyone make decisions for you.
It's like a drug, right? It keeps you pacified, or
completely subdued beyond belief. So Kyle, going back to Kyle, he calls these people basic ass bitches. That's what he calls them. He goes, basic ass bitches. And he's not even saying it derogatorily. He's like, that's just what it is. They're just basic ass bitches. They drink the Kool-Aid. They can't do anything. So going back to your original question about my superhero story. So I got, our company got hired by Rexton Park in San Francisco. At a nearby park, they're having a family day, and they wanted me to create a superhero that was new and original to San Francisco and to bring him to the park to entertain the kids and the families. So I did. I was really excited about that. And at the time, I happened to be working with an incredible acrobat and athlete who, this guy could practically fly. He was like Spider-Man. He can climb anything, leap from tree to tree, do all these things I'd never seen someone do. And this guy was just in it. So I made I think I called him Super Green, something to do with the parks. I don't even remember what it was. We created a costume and a look and a name for him. And this guy was amazing. But everybody who walked up to him and said, well, who's that? And they'd give me this negative look. And I would say, oh, it's Super Green or whatever the name was. Like, well, he's not real. I've never heard of him before. And they'd walk on. And I was like, what? So I kept asking people, what do you mean you haven't heard of him before? He's right in front of us. You don't have to have heard of him. We're seeing him. Well, that's not Spider-Man, or he's not in Marvel. I've never heard of him. They'd walk on. Even the parents would say, well, that's not real. And I would start kind of arguing with 5-year-olds saying, well, when's the last time you saw an actual superhero, not in a cartoon, not in a movie, like a real human doing this stuff? I'm like, well, it's not real. And I couldn't believe it. They kept saying it's not real, even though this is a flesh and blood human person risking their lives for them for 3 hours, entertaining them. So it was a 2-day job. So the next day, so the whole day was like that. I'm like arguing with children about like trying to ignite their imagination to show them that their cartoons and their movies, those are not real. That's not real. That's make-believe. This is real. And people couldn't wrap their minds around it because they were so inundated with media that was fake. That's not real. It's an artistic representation, which is beautiful. I love films, and I love media, I love characters. That's what I do, but I bring it to real life. So anyway, the day didn't go so well because everyone was just walking on, going, that's not real, and going, to the corporate booths and getting their corporate drinks and their corporate straws and their corporate giveaway shit. So I looked around and I said, oh my goodness, this really is a bunch of basic ass bitches. So the next day, I dressed him up as Spider-Man. I totally broke the law because I don't do that. I don't do licensed characters. That's not what I do. But I dressed him up as Spider-Man. I went to a costume shop, dressed him up as Spider-Man, and the crowd went crazy. It was the same artist doing the same thing, but because it was a familiar corporate branded status quo character, all of a sudden he was real, and the crowd went nuts with him. And it was that's just an analogy for thousands of things that we can think of. You know what I mean? It's just brand recognition now. People are so brainwashed by it. You've been in my home before, and I've been doing tours here for 30 years, supporting artists, supporting a community, opening my home for many years. And recently there was a feature on it on Netflix. So I guess Netflix is the new hot streaming network or whatever. And I'm always excited to extend it. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know anything about Netflix or whatever. I think, oh, that's nice. They're doing a feature on us. I know that when they do the edit that they're going to tell their story, not mine. But I surrendered to that. And I had a wonderful time with the Netflix crew coming here. And we had some incidents during the filming. We actually got robbed in the city during a smash and grab where all their equipment got stolen, their passports, their computers. So I had to really use my superpower of they were ready to go back. They were coming from England. They were ready to go back to England that day. So I kind of turned into my ringmaster circus character, which is really me, and said, you guys, we got to figure this out. The show must go on mode. And we figured it out. And it was a great story. We get together. And when the edit came out 7 or 8 months later, I saw it kind of over someone's shoulder. And I really have to say, I didn't like it. But whatever. I signed off. I surrendered to it. It wasn't for me to like or dislike. It was their artwork. Whatever. I didn't think anything of it. Within an hour, we got about 100 phone calls of people wanting to tour the house. People were flying here. And the only reason, it was because of Netflix, not because of me. It was the brand. It was the Netflix brand that got people in. For that, I'm really grateful. But it was odd to see after all these years and time that I've been putting into it, nobody gave a shit until Netflix liked it. So it's the same, you know what I mean? And so I'm grateful for that, but it's just strange to me to realize that, that's how people think. It's this brand recognition now, but it's the culture that we live in currently.
Yeah. It's the power of the corporation, of the big corporation.
They're powerful, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't let anybody, years ago, because I do a lot of work for corporations. I depend on corporations to hire us for their events and their team building, all that stuff. And I enjoy, I very much enjoy, always have enjoyed for the last 30 years, sort of bridging that canyon. There's a canyon between the corporations and ours, and I've always loved doing it. I get criticized for that all the time. People say I'm selling out this, and I'm like, I entertain people. I don't care where they're from. I might not agree with the corporation, but I'm still entertaining people, and people need that. And that's, I'm focused on people directly in front of me, not on some grand ideology that's out of my control. And lately that's going away, and I do kind of miss that a little bit. So I've always been there in the trenches, so I've seen it grow,
And what's entertainment for you? How would you say? Because before us, you mentioned with the little kids, and I think that's really important to ignite the imagination. No?
Yeah, and it's even more important than the adults, because the kids already have it.
Because they can go somewhere else.
The kids are, there's hundreds of stories in this house that I live in right now. Almost all of them came from the genuine, honest heart of a child. A child would walk into a room. I'll never forget, a child walked into a room I was building upstairs. It was a girl. She was maybe 7 or 8. And she goes, "This room represents joy. This is laughter and joy." And I didn't know that. And so I now call the room Tickled Orange. It's about joy and laughter. But that was assigned by a child who just innately felt it. I'm just making art. I'm not thinking about what it is until the story for me comes later. It's the adults that need to ignite their imagination more. That's rich. And that's what, and the corporations right now, they're crushing it. And I'm seeing a lot of people jumping ship to do more creative things. They're
or streamlining it, no? Make it like one little thing instead of.
You mean, what do you mean? Say.
So that it's just like very narrowed down the imagination. It's like the Netflix imagination, for example.
It gets, yeah, I mean, you had parents. You look like you have a lot of love in your life. You're a pretty free guy, but I'm sure that you, like everybody else in the world, out of love, our parents try to crush our creativity out of us. You're not going to make money doing this. It's not this. It's not. I hear it all the time. I'm always telling people, I know that's done out of love, but sometimes you just got to tell them to fuck off and become successful, and they're going to fall madly in love with you again. And because, it's very, very, I'm not a parent, so I don't understand what it's like to be an actual biological parent. I take care of a lot of people. I'm not their father. Some of them call me dad, and I always yell at them, "I'm not your dad." You know what I mean? Because I care about them. So I always say, I know parenting has got to be the most difficult job ever. And it's very rare that you see anyone doing it right, because parents are using their agenda for somebody who they don't even know. They don't even know. You know what I mean? And I think a good parent, which there are a lot of as well, really learns from their child, learns who are they? How do I nurture them to, it came from a seed and an egg. It's the same thing as something biological. How do we nurture this plant, this beautiful thing to come to life, to be healthy, to be fruitful? But people don't see it that way. People are throwing, they're throwing, chemicals on you and shit that are killing you, and I see that all the time. That's a norm all over the world. And that's one of the conversations that comes up from every international young person. Most of the people that come are in their 20s, they're young, they're traveling here because they're just experiencing their freedom for the first time. And I've heard thousands of stories how their cultures, their parents, their politics, their religions do not allow them to be themselves. I've even had people here who are on asylum because they're in mortal danger in their countries. They can be incarcerated or even killed because they spoke out against the government, or they're queer, or they didn't believe in the religion. And you really realize, like, it's an unsafe world to be yourself. And the beauty of San Francisco is it's not. It's a very safe place to be yourself. In fact, that's what the whole culture is based on from day one here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a story about unknown characters in San Francisco, and I'm going to reach out to it just occurred to me 2 days ago. I'm going to reach out to, there's still some, the indigenous people of San Francisco were called the Ohlone Indians, and there are a few other tribes. I'm going to try to reach out to see if anybody still knows of what their culture was like even before it was settled here. I'm very interested to find out, what was that indigenous culture like when there was nobody here,
Wow.
Yeah.
Also in the Bay Area, I guess, no? Like I was really, I don't know, I really liked the concept of the Bay Area, you know?
Yeah,
like all
it's a real place.
around the Bay. Yeah. You have more time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you? I'm all yours. I'll have to drink
Okay.
water.
Yeah. I will also drink. So now, okay. What can you say about extraordinary states of mind, magic? What's your take on it?
That's a really beautiful question. And my take on extraordinary and magic is that it absolutely exists in everybody. But again, based on the conversation we just had, it's doused out of everybody. It's put out, that flame is put out so young that most people don't tap into it. I will say that this house that I live in, this business I run, it's the definition of extraordinary and magic. In fact, I'm doing a talk in 2 weeks from now. I got asked to do a talk in my house where people want to learn more about how we exist. And the thing that's the most magical to me here, and I think you might have met a few of the artists who work here.
Yeah.
I never put out a call to any of them. I never put out, they've all just showed up. Somehow they just showed up. From other parts of the girl who's been here the most, she's from Mongolia. She showed up at the house. Roman, who I don't know if you met Roman, he's kind of my right-hand man now. Two of them, Roman and Chris, they just showed up. Roman was literally going door to door selling solar panels. And he looked like a really intelligent guy. So I listened to his sales pitch. And then I was like, what the fuck, man? You can do better than that. You know what I mean? Like, you're smarter than that sales pitch. And he kept coming back to the house. And within 6 months, he's now working here full time and is contributing like crazy. Another guy, Chris, was just brand new in San Francisco from South Carolina. I think I'm saying that right. If I got your state wrong, Chris, excuse me. Somewhere from the South, good old boy. And he's now, not only is he working here full time, he's doing something that I never thought I'd be able to teach anyone. He's guiding the tours through the house, which is one of the most difficult jobs ever. He's a 20-something-year-old guy. It took me 50-something years to figure out how to do it. He's now the guide in the house. That is magic. I watch pure magic here every day, seeing these people show up, all the interns, everybody somehow just showed up here. I didn't invite them. I didn't even think about them. And they all fill some incredible niche. And together we're not employed. I'm not a corporation, but somehow we all make a living in San Francisco, the most expensive city in the world, as artists who are just doing our own thing with great care. We're creating a demand for ourselves. And this is going to be part of my talk. I'm going to do a much more elaborate talk about it. But to me, and each one of them is extraordinary. Each one becomes more and more extraordinary because they allow me to push them. They allow me to challenge them, to ask them to do things I haven't tried. And then we get paid for it, which is another miracle. It's just kind of amazing, the whole thing. And that's magic. Magic isn't some far off distant thing. It's right here. It's in every cell. It's in every molecule of our bodies, of our unquantifiable spirit or soul or whatever you call it. Force, I don't know what you call it, life force, whatever it is, consciousness. And all it takes in everybody is just a little shift of their dial on the radio station to tune into that. But everyone's too damn afraid to do it. And I think that's been without knowing it, without consciously doing it, I think that's kind of probably what our little company here is doing. Because I know that when people walk through the house after they're here for 3 hours, when they leave, a little something in them might have shifted. A little realization might have occurred. Nothing that, might not have been completely life-changing, but just a little something happened that, why are we talking to each other right now? We had a connection here in this place. Had I met you in some cafe somewhere, we might not have even ever noticed each other, So there's something that happens here,
But also the trees grow much stronger, no?
You tell that story. I want to hear your story. That's true. I was just looking at that the other day,
No, it was with your neighbor, and she was complaining. Is she Chinese?
I have a neighbor from Korea. So the tradition in their country, which I didn't know, is that the trees have to be lower than the roof line of your house. So she's always yelling at me all the time, like fighting. And I'm always like, I don't want to fight with you. You're my neighbor. And but it's always like a fight. We get these yelling matches, and I'm not the type to fight. She's just always yelling at me. I'm like, all right, I'll cut the trees. I can't keep. I'm not a gardener, but I'll keep them cut for you. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. And one day we got in a big fight, and I think I shook her up because I just kind of lost my temper on her. And the next day she comes over and she says in her Korean accent, she goes, Greg, I got you figured out. You're just crazy artist. You crazy artist. There's too much energy in your house. And she brings me some Asian pears as a gift, which was wonderful peace gifts. And then she gets physical. She kind of hits me in a loving way, not violently. She kind of grabs me and she pulls me outside. She goes, look. I'm like, what am I looking at? She goes, look at the trees. I'm like, okay, I'll cut them again. She goes, no, look at the trees. I was like, what am I looking at? She goes, she has me look down the block. She goes, every tree on this block was planted on the same day. Yours are 4 times bigger. And she starts yelling at me, there's too much energy in your house, just too much energy. And I really realized, like, oh my God. And these are trees that are on the public sidewalk. I've never touched them before. I've never even watered them. I've never done anything to them. And you really realize that is magic. It's funny. I noticed it the other day because there was one of those Google cars was going by, you know, they photographed the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the picture and you couldn't see my house because the trees were too big. They were covering it. And every other house you can see. So I guess that's magic, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
You know?
Amazing.
There's a million examples of that around everybody every day. They just have to,
yeah, just see it.
You just can't try too hard. You just got to let it flow, you know?
Mm. What I'm also like, what I learned from you, just a phrase, so that you like renew the energy. It really got stuck with me.
Which was what?
I don't know. It's just like cleaning, but also like reorganizing things.
Oh yeah. Oh, you know, did you find it to be true with what you do?
Like, yeah, just in my general area. Like I like to keep things now more organized, more.
Yeah, change energy. In fact, right where I'm sitting right now, I typically, where I'm sitting right now, I always, in the house, it's funny because there's something I don't change. I always sit in the same seat when I eat because I like the view of this wall behind me. So I always sit opposite of here. And the other day I was like, well, let me sit somewhere else. Let me switch up the energy. And I looked at the room from the other side and I told everyone, stop eating right now, tear down the room, just tear it down. So everyone's like, what? I'm like, just tear it down, get rid of it. So we tore down the room, and now we're redoing it as a because it turns out this room that I'm sitting in, all the artists love to. All of a sudden, it's funny. During different times in my life, artists like to work in certain rooms. All of a sudden, it's this room. Sometimes there's 10 people shoved in this little tiny room. They're all reading and working and doing computer stuff and making. And so I think, well, this is the room the most energy. So we tore it down and we're rebuilding it right now. It's going to take another few months, but it really does work because even for prosperity, I think it helps to, you know, keep the flow going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep the flow. I sound like some crazy hippie, but it's true. So I'm glad that worked on you.
Yeah. And it's also about like, yeah, keep the flow and change, embrace change.
Keep adapting, keep changing. Sometimes you have to force a little change. Everyone's so afraid of change. You know what I mean? It's like, what's the big deal? Keep going. You know?
Yeah. Okay, you're also doing your, how do you call it? When someone dies, then you have
funeral,
yeah.
Yeah. So
tell us about that.
Yes, I'm not sure. So I've experienced a lot of death in my life. You know, not just family, but during the AIDS epidemic, there was a massive amount of death going on in San Francisco. I lost so many people that were dear to me. And then I've always sort of embraced death, even as a young child. I feel it. I grieve in a very celebratory way. I grieve, and I don't fake it, but I cannot help but to celebrate people's lives. So recently, my mother died. My sister died quite suddenly. I don't know. I'm not sure. She might have died after I'm not sure if when you were here, had my sister died yet?
Yeah.
She did. Yeah. So that was quite recent. You were here then.
Yeah.
My sister just dropped dead suddenly, completely unexpected. And of course I grieved it and stuff. And then I immediately wrote kind of a eulogy and helped with the funeral arrangements. And afterwards, my father, who's still alive, came up to me. My father's, of course, he's been alive longer than all of us. He comes to all the funerals. He looked at me. My dad never talks about my business. He said, I have a business proposition for you. I'm like, my dad never talks about business. And he's an auto mechanic, and it's a completely different world than I, but we always have gotten along beautifully. And he goes, I would really like you to consider as part of your business to start hosting funerals. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, the funerals you do, he goes, not only are they're entertaining, people are joyful, they're laughing, they're crying, they're expressing themselves in ways I've never seen before. Because I just bring up the honesty and stuff. It helps being a showman, I guess. When I'm at funerals, I'm not being a showman at all. I'm just being just about as to the core and honest as possible, with no formalities. So I haven't pursued that yet, but my dad and my aunt now, his sister, keep saying, when are you going to do this funeral thing? I'm like, I'm kind of busy, but why don't you guys help me get the gigs? And I would love to help people with their funerals by not so much throwing a party, but by helping them to express their truth, whatever it is, to express the truth of the person who passed, the relationship, the stories that matter to them. Because I think people get so formal, they don't speak the truth. They're speaking the truth that they think somebody wants to hear rather than what really matters. I think it's in death is when you really get to know somebody, honestly. It's true. I've experienced that over and over. There seems to be almost a magic that happens. I say there's certainly an imprint left behind. And I would go further to say that there's even a transference that happens for those that you really love and those that you're really connected with. And I often say it as part of the tour, the imprint is palpable. I mean, there's people who we've never met who die. I mean, look at Martin Luther King or Einstein or Nelson Mandela. There's people who we've never had the opportunity to meet, but yet have changed how we perceive the world, you know what I mean, through the imprint that they leave behind, even though they're not here. So no, I celebrate life and I celebrate death as well, but I really live every moment. I don't know how not to. I just think that's a shame when people are not in the moment and not celebrating every moment and waiting for something to happen that will never happen. That's the big thing around here is the word. We never use the word plan. We show up on time. We do our job responsibly. We visualize it fully. I always call that a fantasy, and we do our best to bring it to life better than we possibly can when we're doing shows and entertainment. But these things can't be planned, really, because you can't plan the reaction of an audience of people that are in front of you. You don't know. You adapt, you change, transcend, grow.
Are these the final words?
I don't know. Are they? Are we going to talk about sex?
Yeah.
I thought that's your gig.
It was just on my mind, actually.
I know.
Yeah, I wondered what was happening to the communist Chinese girl from the story.
Oh, you want the sex story? I have, you know what I should preface it by saying most of my sexual energy personally always goes into creating things and to things. Of course, I probably have more sexual energy than most people, but I don't tend to combine it unless I have an incredible sexual chemistry with another human being. I don't really play with it. I consider that to be an incredibly extraordinary, sacred power in my body. So I don't, but I grew up in a city that's so sexually liberated that people just treat it like it's nothing, like drinking water. But I've never been that way, just naturally. I haven't been. And in the few encounters I've had in my life have been few. Usually when I have an incredible sexual chemistry with people, I'll let it go and it's a tornado. But what I've typically found is that I'm not compatible with them on a relationship way. So I found sex and relationships to be quite different things. And that could start a whole other conversation about sex and relationships in San Francisco. But going back to the house, because there's so much energy in it, through the years of making it, and probably a lot of sexual energy as well goes into the making of this thing. When people come in here, I think some people get kind of horned up. You know what I mean? It's, for lack of a better word. I mean, I think people express it in different ways, but I think a lot of people, through the honesty and the passion, and I think it can arouse your carnal pleasures for sure. Even though there's nothing actually sexually explicit in it. So one day when one of the travelers was a young girl traveling for the first time by herself from China, we get a lot of young women from China, which I really enjoy to see this kind of bravery from these women. Very fascinating, powerful women. we had a girl, maybe she was going to college here, just traveling through, but she became very aroused in the house. And I kind of have an unspoken rule. Sometimes I speak it in the house, where it's like, I don't really want your drugs or your sex in the house too much. I just don't want it, because it's very common in San Francisco. It's common anywhere. So I tend to push in the connectivity thing. I want to learn about them, build friendships. And if and if there's a chemistry between you guys, whatever, it's not my business. But I don't enforce that first, and again, going back to the history of San Francisco, when I was growing up in San Francisco, there were two things you'd ask when you went to a party. And it'd always be like, is there marijuana in the food? And is this going to turn into an orgy? That's how San Francisco was back then. It's a little bit like that still. It's changing. But it's a very, sexual place. So one of the girls who was here was kind of, she was here during that time with all these people. And I was like, well, honey, she was all horned up. And I was like, well, honey, I don't really want, it's just get to know each other. It's fine. But she's going to everybody. She's going to the gay boys, the Muslim boys, everybody. And finally, there's a businessman here too. There's this guy here on convention. And so the next morning, I see kind of a sexy mess in the house. I'm like, oh, for heaven's sake. She had a good time with one person. They consented. And then the guy who was there on convention basically said, well, I think I'm polyamorous now. I'm like, well, San Francisco will do that to you. But maybe it was just one fun night. But people become aroused in different ways, which I think is great. I think it's a wonderful thing to express your sexuality in different ways. I often say sometimes I get more aroused by going to the produce market in the store and picking up a mango than I do by, some person that's supposed to be sexy that I don't feel anything from, but it's a fascinating and powerful part of being human that, again, is so oppressed in people, horribly oppressed, dangerously oppressed, to the point of just
mention tell a little bit about, I don't know, like American culture, also corporate culture, what you picked up also from your talks to the sex workers.
Well, so I've had, of course, being an artist, I've known many sex workers in San Francisco. I'm not a sex worker, nor do I go to them. I'm happily partnered, and my body functions and all that stuff. And so I've never really sought that particularly. Somebody once actually sent me a sex worker. I was having a horny night with one of my partners, so he just brought a sex worker over. I was like, that was not the solution. You know what I mean? And I ended up giving the sex worker a tour of my house that night. You know what I mean? And then he wanted to charge me. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how this works. It's like, I just did my job. You pay me. Like, I didn't want anything from you, which was kind of a funny take on it. But I've been hearing from some of the local sex workers that even the young corporate people are often sometimes so oppressed that they don't even know they don't even know how their body, they don't even know how to have sex anymore. They don't know how to be intimate. And I think it's important that we have a sex industry that perhaps, it's not just can help people to let that part of them flow, to help them identify with it so that they can maybe find a partner or partners or whatever their relationships are here. In San Francisco, there's no one word for partnership, because the relationships in San Francisco, honestly, you can look at 5 people. I always ask people before they come in the house, what's your relationship? And I've heard things that maybe from 5 people in a single relationship that you couldn't make them up in a sci-fi movie, but they're very real, very genuine. And then you have the people that are seeking certain things, which honestly doesn't work. I think if you're seeking a certain kind of a relationship, that's just a fantasy, which is another beautiful part, but I don't think you should necessarily expect that fantasy to happen. Maybe expect one that's even better, to reveal itself if you go for it, So that's what I found in my life. It's always the most unlikely situations or unlikely people that were not part of your fantasy who become, your truth. But sex in San Francisco is fascinating. It really is. And there's the whole queer sector where it's extreme, And there's people here have sexual identities change quite often too. And that's fascinating to me all the time. I had a young traveler here. I don't remember where he was from, but he was fascinated by people who were so outwardly open about their sexual identity. There's trans and queer and this and that. And I don't even remember all the words, but everyone's just sort of accepted. he kept saying, this is not possible in my country. This is not possible. I'm like, yes, it is. You guys are just all lying to each other. It's totally possible. It's right in front of you. Even in you guys are just lying. You're just oppressed. So that day, I was like, let's ask everybody we come into this day, which is probably 100 people, what their sexual identity is. We can't do that. I'm like, yeah, sure we can. So we did. And I would say we heard 100 different answers in that day of how people identified, what their relationships were like. It's quite beautiful, you know, to see the spectrum, the total spectrum of genuine truths that are within all of us. Not assigned to us. You know? Does that conclude this? Do we have to have the orgasm first?
Yeah, I was just inhaling it all. Okay. Let me check. No, you have any? One question.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one. What would you do if you were king of California?
If I were king of California, boy, we have a pretty good governor right now. What would I do? That's a very, very grand question. Well, I'd be a terrible politician, that's for sure.
But you have all the artistic freedom, you know.
To just be myself. I would probably build. I think I would build kind of community places that not unlike this house are kind of safe zones for everybody to explore, for families, for everybody. I think I would build sort of a I guess for lack of a better word, attractions that, you know, this house kind of would say puts people through the mill. It makes them, it brings realizations to life. So I think, you know, if I had the means to do that, I would probably do that. I would probably, this is something that's kind of extreme. I would probably insist that there be a kind of a program that sort of makes people open their homes to immigrants, to people who they think are quite different from them, but safe, you know, but safe. I would definitely want to build something. We need some kind of a mental health institution, because those are people that we cannot welcome into our homes. It's unsafe for everybody on both sides. So, and I don't know what that, in fact, that's really been the main focus of our business in the last 2 weeks. Is this would be of interest to you. I'm meeting, there's an architect in San Francisco, Robin Chang and Peggy Chang, that have a small firm. And Robin has dedicated 50 years of his life to only doing public works in architecture. You were in his work when he does BART stations, parks, airports, only public. He can make a lot of money working for billionaires building mansions, but he says no, and he only wants to do public work. He still rides Muni and public transport every day, doesn't take Ubers and Lyfts, or he walks. And so he presented to me, he's a friend for years, he presented to me something that he thinks can help immediately relieve part of the homeless problem in San Francisco. So I took it upon myself to bring up a well-known influencer who's in politics, and somebody from General Hospital who's in mental health care, and then a few of the artists and an architect, and we all had a meeting, and he showed us this presentation. It was saying we can buy, for a fraction of the money that people are trying to put into this thing, refurbished cruise ships. We have piers in San Francisco and throughout all the Bay Area, and it can be temporary housing for thousands of people on these cruise ships. It already has all the facilities, the kitchens, everything you need to live, until people can get on their feet. That doesn't address the mental ill issue. That has to be a whole separate thing. But for people that are living in their cars and that are working, for people that are transient, for people that just can't afford it, there's teachers that are living in their cars now. These are people that are contributing to the world. That's been the conversation that we're having. I'm not a politician and stuff, but this is the kind of stuff, if I was king of California, I would just implement it without question. That would be my kind of, I would just do shit. I would just get up and do shit. I wouldn't sit around. I would just do shit that actually works, that functions, that helps. I would find the people at the top of their fields, and that are actually doers. Not, yes, we need researchers for sure, But meanwhile, while you're researching for 10 years, we still have a problem that needs to be solved. There's tons of money going to homeless research here, but meanwhile, we still need to take care of our people. So that's the kind of stuff I would implement very quickly. If I had the power to do it, I would buy a cruise ship today, and I would figure something out. And I know that there's a lot involved in that, but I would have the energy to do it. And that's what I would do. Just kind of help with who's in front of us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a big question with very possible answers, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ayan, do you have any, like, how people can, if someone wants to reach out to you, or?
Oh, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm very available for the most part. I make myself available. If you come in a what's that?
The best ability is availability.
I like that. Is that your line?
Not my own.
It's true. I always say, just show up. I usually say in my San Francisco, just show the fuck up. I don't know. People always ask me all these things. I don't know. Just show up. Let's see what happens. Gregangelo.com is my kind of overall website. You can reach me through there. There's an archive. There's all kinds of stuff there. But if you go to gregangelo.com, it'll lead you to, if you're coming to San Francisco, I mean, ideally we support our artists here and stuff through buying tickets to the installation here, but I never turn down meeting people. So what I try to do is once or twice a month at least is to host these kind of social soirees. And you've been to one. You'll have an experience. You'll meet new friends. You'll make friends, and you're gonna liberate and have a good time and jump into the culture. And I will do everything I can to get to know you and to guide you to somewhere that might be of interest to you. Push your limits. Yeah, no, by all means, anybody show up. If you're traveling through San Francisco and want a cultural encounter.
Wow, it's an amazing invitation.
Well, that's how it works.
Show up, people.
I mean, you got to call first. Call first or something. Or I mean, you came here as a recommendation from someone in New York who I never met before, No. And we just have a trust system that, and that's a really beautiful thing that I'm so grateful for, And you had the bravery to be in contact and show up. I've had many people. I had somebody, and then we'll conclude the talk. I had a dear friend now. I don't see him that often. He's Puerto Rican. And this story meant a lot to me. He's in Puerto Rico, and during the second storm, the last storm, I forget the name of the hurricane in Puerto Rico, he was helping with the cleanup, and he's an artist. He's a painter for trade. And helping with the cleanup, and a tree limb shattered his arm. I think it was his right hand, which is his primary hand for painting. And he couldn't get any medical help in Puerto Rico. He had a show scheduled to be in Florida. So he got on a plane to Florida to get medical treatment because he was, of course, in severe pain and needed to get his bones, restructured. And he when he was in Florida, he realized that he didn't like the culture there at all. He's a very funny, animated guy. He messaged me on Facebook. He goes, "I've never met you before." He goes, "However, I have a ticket to San Francisco right now. I'm in Florida." He told me the story. He goes, "I have no expectations of you at all. Somebody just said that I should meet you. And I'm on my way to San Francisco, and you're the first person I'm reaching out to." So being me, I just said, "Sure, come over. When your plane lands, come over. Here's my address. Come over. Come for lunch, whatever." Shows up, comes over. He's a beautiful, animated, intelligent person, and his arm is shattered. He's kind of in a self-made sling, and he's kind of joking to me. He's like, "Oh my goodness, the culture of Florida is just terrible," which it is. It's not a good culture to be in. And sitting at my table right here, facing me, and right away I was like, "Look, I think first business would be to take care of your body." And I was like, "I know San Francisco is a sanctuary city. If you go to General Hospital, they can't turn you away. Blah, blah, blah." I was like, "I don't know what the system is." He does. The city helps him. He's now been there for maybe 2 years and has become an absolute integral part of the city. He's people know him now. He's a part of the community here. He's an artist. He's flourishing. He's working. He's a personality. We have a thing in San Francisco on Easter. On Easter Sunday, we do a thing called the Hunky Jesus Contest, where and there's other ones too, where people come out and they pose as Jesus, as a hunky Jesus, and have from different cultures. And put on by the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. I think they might have a branch in Berlin as well. And he ran for Hunky Jesus. He's a good-looking guy, and he called himself Refugeesus. That's a refugee because he was kind of a refugee here. And at the time, our jackass president, what I'm not going to say his name, had gone to Puerto Rico and was throwing paper towels out into the audience as if the paper towel was going to solve the problem. So Refugees, his character was, he brought a bunch of paper towels and wrote political statements on all of them and threw them out into the audience, and he won the Hunky Jesus contest and became like a little icon in San Francisco. So it's just amazing what can happen if you show up. You know, it was just from that one message from, you know, Facebook. So you just never know. And he's here. In fact, I'm gonna call him today and see if I can meet him. So, Refugees.
It's like following a golden thread, I think.
It is, and we all have
something that triggers something in you, and you like gets your curiosity, and you just like follow it and see like.
And we all have that golden thread. What a beautiful thing. But most people cut it or don't follow it, or they follow the whatever thread. I won't put down any other material, but they're all equally good. But yeah, no, it's true. Follow your golden thread. I think that's a great thing to end on. It's true. It's there. It's there, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yeah. Monsieur, what a joy, what a great way to wake up today and to speak with you. I love the care that you put into the world. It's really beautiful. It really is, you know. And just one person at a time, just, you know, keep doing your thing. And I love that you stay in touch. I really do. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, thank you for staying in touch and showing up.
Of course. And should you come back to San Francisco, you're welcome. Or should you know anybody, you know that if you know anyone who's coming to San Francisco, just connect us. And if I'm here, we'll do what I can. You know?
Yeah. Amazing.
Beautiful. Enjoy the rest. It's evening there now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting dark.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Man, I haven't even gone outside.
Can you just wave like give like a no
like a queen?
No, just with your phone, just show the kitchen or something.
Oh yeah. Let me unplug it. I'll walk around a little bit. Let's see. Kind of I'm not sure. Here, tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, the scents. A lot of light. Too much light.
Is it too much light? I'm not sure. I don't have
more down.
Down.
Yeah.
Am I doing anything?
Mm-hmm.
Is that working?
Yes.
What are you seeing?
A lot of candies next to a pharaoh.
I don't have all the lights on, but you know.
Next
you
to
I want to go outside. Hold on. This will be my first time outside today. We're still working on this. There's no artists here, but. How's that?
Again, amazing. Show just
hopefully that'll sell a few tickets. Say what?
The little thing next to the door, you know, the guy in the ring.
Oh yeah, the painting?
Is it the painting? No, here, no, stop here, go to the left.
Here?
Left and down. Yeah.
That, and actually I'm going to show one thing. I put some words outside of the door. And look, tell me if you can see this. Are you looking at it?
No, yeah.
It says, call out to the whole divine night for what you love, for what you stand for. Earn your name, be kind and wild and disciplined and absolutely generous. And that, my friend, is how we live in this house. And in the world, you know.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Bye for now. I'll see you on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, yes.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah,
Lots of love.
definitely. Yeah, yes.
Ciao.
Bye.
See you.